The words hit me like a slap across the face in front of 50 colleagues. "You're unprofessional, Megan. A liability to this company." CEO Richard Blake's voice dripped with contempt as he tore apart my 3-year perfect record over one missed deadline. But what he didn't know was that our biggest client was listening in, and what they said next would change everything. My name is Megan Lawson, and at 34, I thought I had this whole work-life balance thing figured out. 3 years of perfect deadlines. Not one missed project. Not one angry client. My colleagues used to joke that I must have cloned myself to manage everything so flawlessly. Well, turns out even the best systems can crumble in a single weekend. That Friday morning started like any other. Tyler, my 8-year-old son, was dragging his feet getting ready for school, while I juggled my coffee and scrolled through project timelines on my phone. The Hartwell Industries presentation was due Monday morning, a massive contract that could set our company up for the next 2 years. I had everything mapped out perfectly, color-coded spreadsheets, backup plans for my backup plans, the works. Then Tyler doubled over at breakfast. "Mom, my stomach really hurts," he whispered, his face pale as paper. At first, I figured it was the usual kid drama. Maybe he forgot about a math test. But when he couldn't stand up straight, my mother instincts kicked into overdrive. The emergency room doctor's words still echo in my memory. "Mrs. Lawson, your son needs surgery immediately. His appendix could rupture any moment." The world stopped spinning right there, in that sterile hospital hallway. Here's the thing about being a single mother. Every decision carries double weight. No partner to tag in. No backup parent to handle the crisis while you salvage your career. Just you, making impossible choices with your heart pounding in your chest. I called my boss, Richard Blake, 3 times during Tyler's prep for surgery, straight to voicemail. Left detailed messages explaining the situation, begging for a 2-day extension. Sent emails from my phone between conversations with surgeons and anesthesiologists. Nothing. Radio silence. The surgery took 4 hours. 4 hours of pacing hospital corridors, drinking terrible coffee, and watching my son sleep off the anesthesia afterward. My phone buzzed constantly with work notifications, but every time I glanced at the screen, all I could see was Tyler's scared face when they wheeled him into the operating room. Monday morning arrived with Blake's voicemail waiting on my phone. His voice was ice cold. "Megan, your unprofessional behavior has embarrassed this company. We'll discuss your future here in my office. 9 a.m. sharp." Not a single word asking about Tyler. Not even basic human decency. My hands shook as I arranged for my neighbor to check on Tyler every hour. He was still recovering, still needing pain medication every few hours, but I couldn't risk losing my job. Single mothers don't get the luxury of righteous indignation when the mortgage is due. The elevator ride to Blake's office felt like ascending to my own execution. 3 years of stellar performance reviews, client compliments, and innovative solutions, all about to be flushed away because I chose my son's life over a deadline. Makes sense, right? Well, apparently not in Blake's world. But here's what I didn't know as I walked toward that meeting. Blake had scheduled it as an emergency department gathering. 50-plus colleagues would be watching whatever humiliation he had planned. The conference room was already packed when I arrived, faces turning toward me with a mixture of curiosity and pity. And the weird part is, I still thought I could explain my way out of it. Still believed that once Blake understood the full situation, he'd show some compassion. After all, we're talking about a child's emergency surgery, not a missed happy hour. Blake's assistant gestured toward the conference room, and I took a deep breath. What happened in the next 20 minutes would change everything about my career, my life, and my understanding of just how wrong you can be about people. The room fell silent as I stepped inside, 50 pairs of eyes watching my every move. Blake stood at the front of that packed conference room like a prosecutor about to deliver his closing argument. His perfectly pressed suit, his slicked back hair, his practiced smirk, everything screamed corporate authority. The man loved an audience, and boy, did he have one that morning. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying that fake warmth he reserved for public performances, "we're here to discuss what happens when personal priorities interfere with professional excellence." My stomach dropped. He wasn't even going to pretend this was a private conversation. The conference table stretched between us like a battlefield. Colleagues I'd worked alongside for 3 years sat frozen in their chairs, their eyes darting between Blake and me like spectators at a tennis match. Sarah from accounting gave me a sympathetic look. Mike from IT suddenly found his coffee cup fascinating. The whole room felt charged with uncomfortable energy. Blake pulled up my project timeline on the big screen. Every deadline for the past 3 years appeared in neat little rows. All green check marks except for one glaring red X. "Perfect record," he announced, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Until last weekend, of course." Then came the verbal assault I'll never forget. "Megan Lawson," he said, pronouncing my name like it tasted bitter. 3 years of what we thought was reliability. Turns out it only takes 1 weekend to show someone's true colors. My mouth went dry. This wasn't a discussion about missed deadlines. This was character assassination with an audience. The Hartwell Industries presentation was due Monday morning. A 2.7's $1 million contract. Our biggest potential client this quarter. Blake clicked his laser pointer like punctuation marks. Where was our so-called star project manager? Nowhere to be found. I tried to speak up. "Richard, if I could just explain..." "Explain what?" His voice cut through mine like a blade. "Explain how you abandoned your responsibilities. Explain how you left your entire team scrambling while you dealt with personal matters." Personal matters. That's what he called my 8-year-old son's emergency surgery. Personal matters. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Janet from marketing actually winced. But Blake was just getting started. "This company doesn't run on excuses," he continued, pacing now like a caged animal. "We have clients depending on us. Contracts worth millions. Deadlines that matter more than whatever crisis someone thinks they're having at home." My hands were shaking. 3 years of 60-hour weeks. 3 years of missed soccer games and rushed dinners so I could deliver perfect results for this company. 3 years of proving myself over and over again as a single mother in a corporate world that demanded everything and gave back judgment. "You're unprofessional, Megan." The words hit like physical blows. A liability to this company. That's when I noticed something odd. A small red light blinking on the conference phone in the center of the table. Someone was on the line. Blake had mentioned a routine client check-in call, but I'd assumed it was scheduled for after this meeting. "Richard, please," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "My son had emergency surgery. His appendix." "Your son?" Blake laughed, actually laughed, in front of 50 people. "Let me tell you something about priorities, Megan. When you're paid a professional salary, when you're trusted with $1 million contracts, your priority is this company, not your personal life, not your family drama." The silence in that room was deafening. 50 professionals watching their CEO destroy a colleague's reputation over a missed deadline. Some looked horrified. Others seemed fascinated by the brutality. All of them were witnesses to my public execution. Blake moved closer to where I sat, towering over me like some corporate vulture. 3 years of what I thought was dedication. Turns out it was all an act, wasn't it? The moment something more interesting came along, you abandoned ship. Something more interesting. My son's life-saving surgery was something more interesting. "I think," Blake continued, his voice getting louder for dramatic effect, "we need to seriously reconsider whether someone with such questionable judgment belongs in a leadership position at this company." The threat was crystal clear. My job was hanging by a thread in front of everyone who mattered in my professional world. The mortgage payments flashed through my mind. Tyler's, medical bills, the health insurance I desperately needed as a single mother. "Maybe it's time we found someone who understands what commitment actually means," Blake added, crossing his arms with satisfaction. That blinking red light on the conference phone kept catching my eye. Such a tiny thing in such a massive moment. The client call Blake had waved off as routine. Something nagged at the back of my mind, but I was too focused on survival to process it properly. The humiliation was complete. 50 colleagues had watched me get torn apart for choosing my child over a deadline. Some of these people had kids of their own. They sat there in stunned silence while Blake painted me as unprofessional, unreliable, a liability. Tears threatened to spill, but I fought them back. Crying would only confirm everything Blake had said about me being unprofessional. The room felt like it was spinning, my career imploding in real time while everyone watched. Blake opened his mouth to deliver what I was sure would be the final blow. Then something happened that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. A voice cut through the speaker system. Clear, authoritative, and absolutely furious. "Richard Blake, this is David Morrison from Hartwell Industries." The entire room froze. Blake's face went from smug satisfaction to confusion in half a second. The blinking red light on that conference phone suddenly made perfect sense. Our biggest client had been listening to every single word. Morrison's voice filled the silent conference room like thunder. "I've been on this call for the past 10 minutes, and I have to say, what I just witnessed was absolutely disgraceful." Blake's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The man who'd been so confident in his public destruction of my career suddenly looked like he'd seen a ghost. But here's the thing about moments like these. They move fast once they start moving. And what Morrison said next would flip this entire situation upside down in ways that would leave everyone in that room, including me, completely speechless. The real fireworks were just about to begin. "Mr. Blake, I've been listening to this entire conversation, and frankly, I'm appalled." The color drained from Blake's face faster than water down a drain. You know that moment in cartoons when a character realizes they've walked off a cliff? That was Blake in real life, standing there in his $1,000 suit, suddenly looking like he'd rather be anywhere else on planet Earth. Morrison's voice continued through the speaker, cold as winter morning. "Did I just hear you publicly humiliate an employee for missing a deadline due to her child's emergency surgery?" The room was so quiet, you could hear people's hearts beating. 50 pairs of eyes shifted from Blake to the conference phone, like they were watching the world's most uncomfortable tennis match. Blake's perfectly styled hair suddenly looked ridiculous. His power pose crumbled into something that resembled a scared child. "Mr. Morrison," Blake stammered, his voice cracking like a teenager's. "I didn't realize you were on the call?" "Yes, Richard. I've been listening for 10 minutes. 10 minutes of the most disgusting display of leadership I've witnessed in 30 years of business." Then Morrison dropped the bomb that changed everything. "Megan Lawson is the reason Hartwell Industries chose your company in the first place." "Wait, what?" The room spun around me. Morrison kept talking, but his words felt like they were coming from underwater. 3 months ago, Megan identified a critical flaw in our supply chain process that your other consultants missed completely. Her solution saved us $2.4 million annually. Blake's face went from pale to green. Actually green. The man looked like he was about to throw up his expensive breakfast all over his Italian leather shoes. "Furthermore," Morrison continued, "Megan's innovative approach to our logistics restructuring impressed our board so much that we specifically requested her for all future projects." My colleagues' faces were priceless. Sarah from accounting had her mouth hanging open. Mike from IT looked like he was watching his favorite team score the winning goal in overtime. The whole dynamic in that room flipped so fast it gave me whiplash. Blake tried to recover. "Mr. Morrison, surely you understand that deadlines are important, yes, but not more important than a child's life." Morrison's voice could have cut glass. "What kind of company are you running where emergency surgery is considered a personal inconvenience?" Here comes the part that still gives me goosebumps. "Richard, let me be crystal clear. Either Megan Lawson gets your position immediately, or Hartwell Industries terminates our contract today, all $4 million of it." The silence was deafening. Blake's mouth moved, but no sound came out. 50 people watched their CEO get demolished by the biggest client in company history. The same client he'd risked losing because he wanted to publicly destroy me over choosing my son's life. Sweet justice tastes better than chocolate cake, let me tell you. Blake's assistant rushed into the room, probably wondering why her boss looked like he'd seen his own ghost. Other department heads started filing in, drawn by the commotion. Word spreads fast in corporate environments, especially when the CEO is getting verbally destroyed by a client over speakerphone. Morrison wasn't finished. Effective immediately, I want Megan running point on all Hartwell projects. And Richard, clean out your office. Any company that allows this kind of treatment of employees doesn't deserve our business. The room erupted in whispers. Blake stood there like a statue, his career crumbling in front of everyone who'd watched him try to destroy mine. The irony was so thick, you could cut it with a butter knife. 30 minutes earlier, I'd walked into that room thinking my career was over. Now Blake was the one facing unemployment, and I was about to become CEO of the company that almost fired me for being a good mother. But the best part? Tyler was home recovering beautifully, and for the first time in 3 years, I'd have the power to make sure no parent ever faces this choice again. The board meeting happened 3 days later. Blake tried to fight Morrison's ultimatum, claiming clients couldn't dictate internal company decisions. Funny thing about leverage, though, when someone controls $4 million of your revenue, they absolutely can dictate whatever they want. I walked into that boardroom wearing the same outfit I'd worn to my public humiliation. Same blazer, same confidence I'd rebuilt from scratch. The difference? This time, I wasn't walking in as the accused. I was walking in as the solution. Blake sat at the far end of the table, his usual swagger replaced by the posture of a man who knew he'd played his cards terribly. The board members looked uncomfortable, shuffling papers and avoiding eye contact with their soon-to-be former CEO. "Gentlemen," the chairman began, "we've reviewed the situation with Hartwell Industries. Their position is non-negotiable." Morrison had followed through on every threat. The contract termination notice sat on the table like evidence in a trial. But right next to it was something beautiful. A new contract worth $6 million, contingent on my promotion to CEO. Blake made one last desperate attempt. "She missed a critical deadline. How can we trust—" "Richard," the chairman's voice cut through his excuses like a sword. "Your actions cost us our biggest client and nearly destroyed our reputation. Megan's actions saved a child's life and impressed that same client enough to double their investment. Simple math, really." The vote was unanimous. Blake's termination effective immediately. My promotion starting Monday. Walking out of that building for the first time as CEO felt surreal. Blake cleared out his office while I called Tyler from the parking lot. "Guess what, buddy? Mommy got a promotion." "Does that mean more money for video games?" he asked, still groggy from his afternoon nap. "It means Mommy can work from home when you need her. That's the real victory here. 6 months later, our company has flexible family policies, emergency leave protection, and a culture that actually values human beings over deadlines. Profits are up 30% because, surprise, treating employees like people makes them work harder, not less. Blake? Last I heard, he's working for a smaller firm across town. No word on whether they have emergency surgery policies. Morrison still sends Tyler get-well cards on his surgery anniversary. Some clients become family, turns out. The best part isn't the corner office or the salary increase. It's knowing that no parent will ever face that impossible choice in my company. Again. Sometimes the best revenge is just being better than the person who tried to destroy you. Tyler's scar healed perfectly. So did mine.